Opinions are all over the place about the two coordinators with Baylor ties. Let's get to the bottom of it.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into a Locked On crossover edition. I'm Zach Blackerby with Locked On Auburn. Drake Toll, host of Locked On Baylor. We're finally getting to do a crossover, my brother, because Auburn hires former Baylor DC, Ron Roberts. He was not there for very long, was very good in 2021, was last year. How should Auburn people feel about this hire, in your opinion?
Well, Zach, let's first realize this is not the first time a Baylor tie has been the DC at Auburn. I don't know if you remember Phil Steele and what he brought to Auburn. I mean, it's like at this point,
Kevin Steele.
What's the difference? Phil Snow, Kevin Steele, one or the other. Kevin Steele at Auburn.
It's early.
Look, you know what, Zach? Right now, I'm gonna peel the curtain back for all your Auburn fans. There, it's 7:45 local time for me. I'm a college student, Zach. This is unheard of. I've never done this
week
in my life.
I'm a monster for asking you to do this. I'm so sorry.
But honestly, look, the Kevin Steele deal worked out well at Auburn. I mean, and it built into this mythical, will he even be the head coach? It worked so well. So Look, if that trend continues, you're happy. But to us at Baylor, the optics on this are weird, right? Guy gets fired from job at university that I would assume most Auburn fans assume is not the prowess of an Auburn. And then the Tigers go out and hire him. So to me, I don't want to say shocked, but I started to read the message boards at the University of Arkansas when he started to get into the conversation there.
Yeah.
And almost everyone was pissed. They're like, who is this guy? Why would we hire a guy who just got fired from Baylor? And Zach, what's weird to me, what's really weird, no one wants to bring up last season. Bottom third in the Big 12 in passing defense, bottom third in the Big 12 in rushing defense. They only really bring up that 2021 year. And the entire roster wasn't his. It wasn't Dave Aranda's. And the schemes there it felt like Aranda the whole way. But looking at Ron Roberts, I'm kind of scratching my head a little bit here. I didn't think he'd get a job of this caliber yet. So maybe this is a guy whose career is, I don't want to say revived because he's not down and out, but it's just the optics on this to me are a little puzzling.
Yeah, it's almost like he fell upwards, and we can talk about that with the other coordinator in a second, Drake, but it is interesting. So you see, I talked to some of the folks that know this guy, and they described him as like the godfather of showing this specific type of blitz and showing and simulating pressure.
Yeah.
Did you see a lot of that? Was that a big talking point when talking about Baylor's defense from your perspective over the last 2 years?
That's what it's going to be. It's going to be creating havoc. Jackers and robbers is what they called it. They're going to have specific and different names for how they build this defense that are different in college football. It's almost it's weird how it mirrors what Philip Montgomery and Art Briles did at Baylor on the offensive side, where you go, what is this? Where did it come from?
Yeah.
And you got names like Terrell Bernard and Jalen Petrie, who were good football players, but then Dave Aranda and Ron Roberts get on campus and they become great football players. I think Ron Roberts is a great developer. Last season, you saw the team struggle in a lot of areas defensively with a lot of new players. I don't know if you exactly pin that on Roberts, but if you do look at the full body work in 21, which you can't erase, certainly, it was unbelievable how well Baylor's defense was just able to make things uncomfortable for opposing teams. If you want to go back and watch Ron Roberts' film, go to the Oklahoma-Baylor game in 21 in Waco. Okay. And Lincoln Riley has to bench future Heisman winner Caleb Williams for deposed Spencer Rattler because Baylor's creating so much havoc. That's what you get in Ron Roberts. Was it fully consistent when he was in Waco? No, but there are so many flashes of this guy being a Broyles Award style defensive coordinator, at least.
Was the personnel situation different from 21 to 22? I know you mentioned they weren't his players, but it doesn't seem like he's going to be doing a lot of the recruiting anyway. This wasn't a recruiting hire. His list of all-time recruits is very short, and the guys on there, I think they're all 3 stars, which is fine. I think Hugh Freeze is going to expect a little bit more from the recruiting classes. We'll have to wait and see how that turns out. But personnel-wise, what does this guy need to be good?
You know, it's interesting, Zach. It feels as though the trend in college football today is your coordinators. I don't know if this is in the SEC as much as it is the Big 12, but a lot of the time you're seeing the coordinators focus solely on team, and a lot of your quarterback coach, your running back coach, your D-line coach, those are the guys hitting the recruiting trail. So they might not ask Ron Roberts, who's 55 years old, to go into a recruit's house and be like, hey, how's that rap music you kids are doing nowadays? Usually that's the 28-year-old who just got done playing in the NFL. So
yeah, no, I'm totally there with you. Zach Etheridge, Coach Crime Dog. I mean, those are going to be the guys that are get the talent, and then he can do all the scheme. So
hopefully right?
I'm with you on that.
Now, and at that point, Zach, it is how well can he relate to these young guys? So here's an interesting point. And I warred with whether or not I'd bring this up, but Aranda talked about it week in and week out in his press conferences. He said that with his coaching staff this year, there were some ego issues. He was struggling with immaturity on the team and ego issues in the coaching staff where it felt like he couldn't connect to all of his coaches. We in the media, you could dig into however you wanted to what that meant, but you couldn't find who it was, right? Aranda's pretty lock and key. But the fact that the first two guys that were fired were Ronnie Wheat and Ron Roberts makes you think that these ego issues he was talking about all season would probably be the first guys that are on the chopping block there. So I've still got a lot of questions there. Maybe you're not looking at how well can he recruit, but how well can he sustain these young guys if it really fell apart last season? I mean, this past fall for Baylor's defense was awful.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I understand. So why do you think it took this long? Because he was fired a minute ago, right? Like it's been a second. And there are all these rumors of like, okay, Auburn's waiting for the Browns to be eliminated from playoff contention so Chris Kiffin could come be the DC. He's the D-line coach in Cleveland right now. Or like the Coach Kelly at Alabama, like what's going on with that? And so it was just kind of weird where it's like, well, if this was your guy, you could have done this weeks ago, right? Yeah. You could have done it a long time ago, and that wasn't really how it happened. So it leads me to believe he wasn't the first choice Drake. That's just me guessing. I don't know that. I'm just kind of reading between the lines here. But the timing is weird to me.
Yeah. The timing is weird to me. Baylor has not hired a DC at this point. And when I thought Ron Roberts, I thought, all right, he got fired. That means Dave Aranda's got a Jim Leonard who's waiting in the weeds to be the next guy. And Baylor has not hired a DC yet, which I don't think is an issue. These teams, it feels like, can hold out for a little bit while the NFL season wraps up, while the bowl season wraps up. Auburn didn't. Hugh Freeze just said, I'll take this guy. And I don't know if it's necessarily a like a wholly bad thing, but I'm scratching my head a little bit. There are other options out there that still seem better than Ron Roberts. Maybe this works out. But again, Zach, I'm a big optics guy. And optically, I've got questions that even I can't, or probably you can't answer about why, when, what.
Well, let's talk about the other coordinator in a second, who also just got fired from a smaller school than Auburn and maybe fell upwards, but also has Baylor ties. Drake, you and I will discuss that in just a moment. Little Philip Montgomery, Philip with one L. That's important. One L in just a moment. Drake, can you imagine eating meat and it not being from Omaha Steaks? Because I have a hard time comprehending that.
Right. It's the weird part of it is I've never done it. I've never done it. And that's something that
You've never eaten meat ever that wasn't from Omaha Steaks.
It's my two truths and a lie. Like you walk into a Waffle House and it's like, oh, what do you want? Steak and eggs? Are they Omaha Steaks? No. You walk out of the Waffle House. Really
or just get the eggs and a waffle.
No, that's a great point, Zach, but I don't do that. I'm pretty, like, I'm going to eat meat.
You're that intense about it.
Yeah, 100%.
You're that intense about it. That's
100%.
Great. Well, I think it's great because Omaha Steaks, they've put together a delicious selection of various gift packages. We call them meat packages here, Drake. If you want a meat package to make shopping for the ones you love nice and easy, go to omahasteaks.com. Take advantage of their 50% off site-wide, plus use promo code LOCKEDON at checkout. You get an additional $40 off of your order. Get a nice meat package from Omaha Steaks for the person you love. What else do you want in life? So be sure to check that out. OmahaSteaks.com. Take advantage of 50% off site-wide. Plus, use promo code LOCKEDON at checkout to get that extra $40 off your order. Drake, let's discuss.
I just want to also throw out there, they called me the meat package in high school. So
I bet.
It brings back some memories right there, Zach. Thanks for that.
I bet. Yeah, you're going through a lot this early in the morning for you. Okay, so Drake told Locked On Baylor, Philip Montgomery, Philip with one L, Montgomery, spent time at Baylor. Most recently was the head coach at Tulsa from 15 to just recently before he was let go. But before that, from 08 to 11, he was co-OC, quarterbacks and running backs coach at Baylor. After that, from 12 to 14, he was the offensive coordinator, all under Briles. This is why I like this hire a lot, Drake.
Yeah.
And you can tell me if I'm sunshine pumping. We call it booging. If I'm booging, call me out on it, because I probably am booging to some extent. But this is Hugh Freeze's offense, right?
Yeah.
Like, that cannot be overstated. This is a Hugh Freeze offense, regardless of who the OC hire was. There was much more attention on the DC hire because it's like, okay, they're probably giving him the keys. He's going to be the head coach of the defense. But with Montgomery coming in, he kind of already did this with Art Briles, because that wasn't his offense. And you can call me out if I'm wrong on this, but like, that was an Art Briles offense that he was able to just kind of be the number 2 guy and be the quarterback's dude and kind of collaborate in the game plan without it being really his offense. I like that because he's done this role before.
I like this hire for a lot of reasons. Number one being good offense. I don't know if you enjoy good offense or Auburn fans generally would like that.
It's been a minute. I forgot what it felt like.
Yeah, this probably helps with that based on like resume wise. Philip Montgomery's been that guy. And at Baylor, you're right. Art Briles was kind of the great creator. Even when he was at Stephenville High School in Texas, it was, this is the next guy. And Kendall Briles, if your last name was Briles, you were on the staff and you were coaching the offense, unless you were Philip Montgomery with one L, because 2 L's was way too many in one season for Baylor. They just kept winning. And
wow.
Yeah, you like that? You clipped that one right there.
You're incredible.
And so Montgomery at Baylor, really, there were no qualms. It was so odd to me. How often do you find this assistant coach where like no one's ever mad at you? Somebody always wants somebody fired, and it was never Philip Montgomery, because he coached a Heisman-winning quarterback as the quarterback's coach. And I don't know if you've seen what was always so fascinating to me. His resume is like, in 1 year, he'd be the quarterback coach and the running back coach and the co-OC. It's like, who does that to someone? That is just feels like hell in a coordinator position. Right. But Montgomery took it in stride and coached some of the best offenses. Bryce Petty and Nick Florence was an All-American caliber quarterback. And then you get your RG3 who won the Heisman. And that to me is a lot of what Philip Montgomery was able to do at Baylor. And, I got to watch him at Tulsa a little bit too. I grew up near Tulsa, and that's a program where, look, you took him to 4 or 5 bowl games like that. Look, you are Tulsa. Right. You're Tulsa. That's the best you're going to get. So I don't think this is a hire where it is a good landing spot for Philip Montgomery. And I, for one, at least, am excited that he's getting an opportunity like an Auburn after Tulsa kicks him out of the door, being really one of the best coaches they've had in a while. Yeah.
So what do you think he brings to an offense? I've read a lot about his run game, which makes sense as running backs coach. Yeah. Is he a running game coordinator type guy under Hugh Freeze? What do you think that looks like?
Yeah, that's the weird thing about this is when you think Baylor football and the Big 12 from the early 2010s, you don't think the run game. But there are guys like Lake Seastrunk that pop out and are career leaders at Baylor in rushing yards because of what he was able to do with that game. You think about this too. And I'm really Zach, it's early, so I'm just formulating some of these ideas. And
I'm really proud of you. You're doing great.
And this one is my favorite. You think about Art Briles was the let's sling it around the yard to do something different, launch it deep, see what happens. Someone had to supplement that with the run game. It was Philip Montgomery. That was his job, was to 1L Philip Montgomery. Right. And you saw Baylor take that in stride. And I think even after he was gone, because he took that Tulsa job in the middle of Art Briles' tenure in Waco, that you still saw shades of, hey, Philip Montgomery told Art Briles that we can run the ball sometimes, so let's still do that. And that's what you get. Hugh Freeze is going to be the great conductor. You ever seen The Greatest Showman? What Hugh Jackman is in The Greatest Showman?
Yeah, is Is Hugh Freeze Hugh Jackman?
That's Hugh Freeze. Hugh Freeze and Hugh Jackman are both named Hugh because of that movie.
Philip with one L is Zac Efron?
Philip with one L is Zac Efron / bearded lady because, quarterback and running back coach. So he kind of brings the best of both worlds to you, but
right.
is almost the, hey, Art, I know we're throwing the ball a lot, man. Maybe we could run it once or twice, please. He was that guy. He was the get back coach, but for running the football.
How much of RG3's success was Philip with one L Montgomery, and how much of that was just RG3's a freak and it was a great offense and the Big 12's defenses weren't good that year? How much of it was that, and how much of that was Philip Montgomery? Because Auburn fans are like, well, Robbie Ashford, like he showed signs as a redshirt freshman last year. Can Philip with one L Montgomery kind of help him turn the corner? Do you think? Is that Are you drinking this early in the morning?
Yeah, Zach, man, I'm in college, so we're just gonna.
Once again, I'm proud of you. You're doing really good. Can he help Robbie turn the corner? Do you think?
Yeah, if Robbie Ashford wins the Heisman next year, I'll be shocked. By the way, just gonna throw that out there before I get too far into this one.
Me too, but I'll be okay with it.
Yeah, I don't look. There's so much in the pot of an RG3 that it's tough to say that any one single factor was it, and I don't think it was explicitly Philip Montgomery. Every hire, Baylor's in the middle of this defensive coordinator search, and as I do my research, I think like, oh, this guy coached Derek Stingley Jr. That doesn't mean he is the reason Derek Stingley, it's the kind of that same deal with Philip Montgomery and RG3. Art Briles was a majority of why RG3 was RG3. That offense against Big 12 defenses that just didn't know what they were seeing at the time was what made RG3 so good. Yeah. So do I think he's the great quarterback whisperer that you're probably getting Auburn fans portraying him as right now? No, likely not. But he does bring a unique style of offense and an innovative style to Auburn. Look what he did offensively at Tulsa, not a notable football program in the last few decades. And his offenses looked really good, like nationally ranked. So he's doing things that are outside the box. I think he's going to bring that to Auburn too. I don't want to leave it completely off the table that, look, you've got Hugh Freeze, who was marred in controversy over the course of the offseason, and people wanted to talk about that. Montgomery being on campus and with the program at Baylor while the events that led to the scandal of 2016 happened. That's going to be a point for the rest of his career. It's going to be a point for Kendall Briles. It's going to be a point for obviously Art Briles.
Sure.
So you're kind of adding into that with this hire. It looked like he shook some of that at Tulsa, but look, man, there are still some skeletons in that closet that will be at some point during his tenure or either have to be addressed or things will come up. So that's something I'm also monitoring with this hire. But as far as what he's going to bring into the locker room and bring on the field, it will equate to winning football games, which is the apex of this sport.
I want to touch on the optics. You've alluded to it a few times. Let's touch on the optics, and I want you to grade these two hires for the Auburn Tigers. You know these guys so well. Want to encourage all of you watching and listening to check out our friends at BetOnline. Drake, can you imagine wagering anywhere else?
Dude, it's what's funny. It's where the game starts. So the other day, I go to turn the game on. It wasn't on. I was like, what's going on here? Then I went to BetOnline, and I realized I was not at BetOnline, so the game itself couldn't start. Finally, Baylor Gonzaga tipped off because I went to BetOnline. It's literally where the game starts.
It is where the game starts. They have more odds, props, lines than anyone else out there, so be sure to check them out for all of your bowl season needs. College basketball is in full swing. It's a great time to be alive, and it's a great time to be at BetOnline. BetOnline is where the game starts. Drake told optically, you mentioned it. It's weird, right? Auburn hires two coordinators that had just been fired, both of their previous stops. I think both of them kind of make sense when you look at it, but optically, like if you're Hugh Freeze and you're trying to build something and there's a lot of resistance, right? I mean, you're in the SEC West. It's going to be tough to kind of get any positive momentum because the previous guy really just messed up a lot of things. But he's gone. Thank goodness. He can't hurt us anymore.
No, he can't.
But great these hires. What do you think of them? Let's start with defensive coordinator Ron Roberts.
Now, look, I want to preface this by saying I've got a pretty strict scale. My A+ would be hiring Brent Venables as your defensive coordinator. My D- would be hiring John Chaffetz as your defensive coordinator. Okay. So that's where the scale is here. And when I think Ron Roberts, I probably give him a C+. And a big part of that for me is what? Zach, we at Baylor, I would consider this university to be a step down athletically from where Auburn is by virtue of not just the SEC, but also national championship prowess in the last decade.
Sure.
Baylor, who goes 6-6, fires its defensive coordinator, and Auburn, who has beaten Alabama multiple times, is this great storied program, goes and hires the deposed DC from a smaller school. Again, still scratching my head. He's got stuff there, but even look at his track record before that. Southeast Louisiana, Delta State. This isn't a guy who was the DC at Alabama or the DC at Florida or Florida State in the last 20 years. His resume is kind of weird in itself. So it's a C higher. It's a C+ higher. What Hugh Freeze has done here is taking a chance. This is not a surefire hire. This is taking a chance. It either pays off really well in the SEC or he's fired after year one, similar to how Baylor's OC was in year one for Dave Aranda, whose name I'm missing because it's 7:45 in the morning.
It's okay. If it was Philip Montgomery, you would remember because he's so memorable.
Only one L, which is just impeccable to me.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah. All right, great Philip Montgomery.
Philip Montgomery is a solid, again, this is A+ would be hiring Lincoln Riley as your offensive coordinator.
I hope you're not defending your strict grading scale. I think you should stand by it. I hope you're just explaining it for the folks that may not understand.
I am opening it up for everyone. I don't want them to be upset with me when I tell you Philip Montgomery's a B+. B+ on my scale is really good.
Yeah.
And that is this hire in Philip Montgomery is something that I believe puts his career on track with where it should be, which is maybe a weird thing to say, but he deserves to be in a position like an OC at a Power 5 SEC Big Ten specifically school. And this is a great spot to land at Auburn. There are so many athletes. He will walk in the door day one and have more athletes at Auburn than he ever had at Baylor, especially from a recruiting standpoint. And that's going to be like, you just went from, oh, my mom bought me a 98 sedan to you now have a 2016 Tesla, earlier model, right? This isn't the perfect car, but he's driving something that's a whole lot better than what he's got in the last 10 years in his career, 20 years in his career. So give Philip Montgomery the keys to that. I think you can open it up. How will the relationship between those two, Philip and Hugh, mesh? That's a big reason this isn't in the A range for me, because you've got a guy who's going to control the offense. Where will Philip Montgomery fall in? That's going to take some time to figure out.
Drake Toll, for all the Auburn folks watching, if they're like, man, this guy is incredible.
I tell myself that all the time.
He was called the Meat King in high school. How can they check out everything you got going on?
I had to rebrand all my socials from @TheMeatKing because I took the job at Locked On. So that was a pretty
one of the first things we talked to you about. It's like we got to drop the Meat King.
Can't do the whole Meat King thing. So I have gone back to @DrakeCToll on Twitter and all of the social media platforms. If you're out there and you are a Baylor fan listening to this, which it's a crossover, so there are you. Follow the content on my personal or @LockedOnBaylor on Twitter as well. And we're constantly covering stuff across the country because Baylor's well connected. As you see, you are literally at Baylor East right now because the amount of Baylor ties at Jeff Grimes, man, another Auburn to Baylor tie. Somebody who we love dearly. Thank you.
Yeah, we picked the wrong coordinator. That's the one we were supposed to get.
Yeah, weren't you guys supposed to hire Jeff Grimes? That's what I was hearing. Whatever happened with that, huh?
There's still a lot of people that believe that Jeff Grimes is like the savior of the Auburn football program. So
give it 3 years. Give it 3 years. If this whole Hugh Freeze thing doesn't work out, which I think it will, by the way. You didn't ask me to grade the Hugh Freeze hire.
You want to?
Bias?
Okay, go ahead.
You know what, Jack? When I first saw it, I didn't like it. I didn't. And you know why? I don't know. I'm so disconnected from this. I'm just not a big Liberty guy because of the whole Baylor Liberty thing. But I think this Hugh Freeze hire, what does he do, Zach? What does he do? Philip Montgomery's only got one L. Hugh Freeze has no W's, but he should because he wins football games.
Right.
And that's what you want in the SEC. He's beaten Alabama. He's done it. Zach, give me an A++ for Hugh Freeze.
Auburn folks, go head over to Locked On Baylor and give him some love. You can find all my written work at auburndaily.com, and we'll see you tomorrow. This has been a crossover for Locked On Auburn and Locked On Baylor.